Today, we're taking some pretty old ideas and applying them to something super modern, keeping your own neighborhood safe. We're going to look at what's happening on your street through a kind of art of war lens, using some really interesting guides to figure out the tactics of troublemakers, and more importantly, how to deal with them.
So let me ask you a really direct question. Do you actually know the signs of trouble in your own neighborhood? I mean, it's so easy to just, go about your day and miss the little things. But here's the thing. Spotting those patterns, that's your first line of defense. So let's dive in and figure out what those patterns actually are.
So let's start with section 1. This is all about being a good scout. It's about spotting those red flags. These are the bigger picture signs of trouble that you can see in your community just by paying a little closer attention to what's going on around you.
Okay, so the big idea here is patterns. A single cyclist at night? Totally normal. But what about a guy circling your block 3, 4, 5 times? Or a car that keeps making weird stops at 2 in the morning? That's not just random. That's a pattern, and it's one of the first signs that something just isn't right.
And, timing is a huge deal here. The source material actually points to this really specific window between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. That's when most of us are asleep, which makes any weird activity stick out like a sore thumb, but only if you're actually paying attention. And it's not just about things happening over and over. Think about movements that seem coordinated, like a vehicle convoy. That might sound dramatic, but it could be as simple as 2 scooters taking off one right after the other. Or what about someone just trying to pick a fight for no reason? It's not always just a jerk being a jerk. It could be a tactic, right? A way to test reactions or create a distraction. Not all clues are moving targets. Sometimes the evidence is just sitting there. Things like empty bottles or, even worse, syringes, that's not just messy, that's a clue. And even something that seems small, like new scratches on a fence, that could actually be a message, a way of marking territory or trying to intimidate people. All right, so we've been looking at the whole neighborhood. Now let's zoom way in to something much more personal and, honestly, a little creepy. We're shifting from those general signs to a very specific psychological tactic aimed at one individual. Okay, this is where it gets wild. This technique feels like something straight out of a spy movie, but it happens right in front of you. It's all about having a believable cover story. So person A uses their friend as a kind of human shield, right? They can stare right at you over their friend's shoulder, but you never actually lock eyes with them. To anyone else walking by, it just looks like 2 friends having a chat. But for the person being watched, well, it's a completely different story. It's surveillance, plain and simple. And let's be super clear about this. The goal isn't just to see what you're doing. The real point here is the intent. This is a psychological move. It's all about making someone feel constantly anxious and afraid, but without ever laying a hand on them. Okay, wow. So we've talked about the big neighborhood level stuff and this really specific personal tactic. So what's the big question, right? What in the world are you supposed to do about any of this? How do you go from just seeing things to actually doing something effective? That brings us to our final section. Think of this as your playbook. We're moving past just spotting the threats. Now we're talking about taking action. Here are the real, concrete steps you can take to handle these situations safely and smartly. So here it is, your 4-step action plan. Super simple. Step 1, become a detective. Write everything down. Dates, times, what people were wearing, license plates. Your notebook is your best friend here. Evidence is everything. Step 2, assemble your team. Tell your trusted friends, tell your family. Don't go through this alone. Being isolated is exactly what they want. Step 3, bring in the pros. Call the authorities. And because you have that detailed log, you're not just calling with a hunch, you're calling with a credible report. And finally, step 4, make yourself a tougher target. Change up your daily routes, lock down your social media, just make yourself less predictable. Okay, this next part is absolutely critical. You've got to know who to call and when to call them. Look, not every single thing warrants an emergency call, right? That pattern of bikes circling at night, that's a perfect reason to call the non-emergency number. It helps the police build a bigger picture. But, and this is a big but, if you are actively being followed or threatened, that is an emergency. Don't hesitate. You call for help immediately. It's all about using the right tool for the right situation. So, when you boil it all down, what are we really talking about? It comes down to this simple idea. See something, do something.
Your awareness is like your alarm system, but taking action, that's your shield. You have to trust that gut feeling when something feels off, and then have the confidence to take that next step. So that's where we'll leave it. You've now got a whole new framework for looking at your own street and a solid game plan for what to do. Look, thinking like this, it's not about being paranoid, not at all. It's about being prepared. So the real question I have for you is, now that you know what to look for, what are you going to do differently?